Well, let me introduce myself. My name, as I said, is on the handout. I graduated Harvard College, have a degree in psychology, sociology, and cultural anthropology. Served in the United States Air Force in Korea, came back to this country, went to the Graduate Business School at Columbia University and have an MBA in international business. Had several jobs, but ended up really with the IBM Corporation for 30 years, and I worked in marketing, management, and in education. This is beginning my 9th year giving talks to people like yourselves, people at community centers, assisted and independent living facilities, libraries all over the metropolitan area. And I have right now 19 topics, and you've heard most of them, for those of you who have been here for the number of years that I've talked here. Today's topic is a little bit offbeat in a sense, but let me explain what it is. Unintended consequences, most of the things that mankind, by the way, you're also allowed to, it's an interactive session, so I'll call upon you once I establish my thesis and some of the topics, call upon you if you wish to make any commentary on what I'm saying. Unintended consequences are basically, it's easy to explain by an example, and we can start off with the Hezbollah war with Israel, which just happened. A lot of unanticipated, unexpected, unintended consequences came of that. And obviously something even closer to us here in this country is the Iraqi war. And we're seeing all the ramifications of unintended consequences. We did not go to that war to see the kind of results we have right now happening there. They're unintended. And I'll let me establish my whole thesis. This is something that's been happening since mankind existed, frankly. And as I stated in the first commentary, the first item on the handout, humanity's ancient and current methods of making decisions. Man and women have been making decisions for millions of years, or Homo sapiens for the last 50,000 years, which have affected their lives and affected civilizations and the directions and their own actually existence. And for the most part, everything up until not too long ago was trial and error. And we still do trial and error. Most of us as individuals don't have cadres of people studying things before we have to make a decision. We make a decision based on what our experience has been and what we observe and what we can think the possible consequences will be. So we make it on trial and error, basically. The fact is that some decisions are unintended and they're accidental. Others are research-oriented. Pharmaceutical companies wouldn't exist without research facilities that have intended consequences. We as individuals really function mostly in trial and error situations. We listen to some people give advice who supposedly have research or knowledge beyond ours, and so we make an educated move in that direction. But mankind, for the most part, I mean, how did it take mankind millions of years to develop the wheel, as an example? We see inventions every day now. You and I are living in an age where young people are getting input and change and new things every day, and I can't keep up with it. I don't know if you can keep up with it, but I have difficulty because you buy a cell phone and all of a sudden it'll take your pictures, and all of a sudden you can charge your, at the food store with it. You can, I don't know, maybe hold on to it and it'll lift you up and fly you somewhere. But you know, that's the speed of technology being, so people are doing that. So it's hard, but still we go on trial and error for the most part, and educated guesses. You would expect, however, people like pharmaceutical companies, governments, large organizations have access to all sorts of computerization and research facilities and testing facilities to come up and really do a better job than we as individuals can do. And we see that. We saw it this past week, we saw the shot up to the station that's circling the world. And for the most part, it's almost unimaginable that we have been doing that for so many years, and yet for the most part it comes off pretty flawless. There are occasional things which are unanticipated, that's correct, But the fact is, it has worked because of the tremendous amount of thought and power of equipment that has been developed that can control and anticipate things that might happen. And obviously, it takes man to build that into those systems. So we have all that huge amount of research, development, thinking, so that you would think that there wouldn't be unintended consequences. But I'm going to go through a list of things, and we can all contribute even some additionally, because it's endless, really, of things that we have lived with even today, unfortunately, with so much that's really unintended consequences. And much of them, some of them cannot be foreseen, but much of them, the misery that we humans cause other humans, unfortunately, is really unintended. But here it is, we're living in that kind of an environment today. The Hezbollah-Israeli war is an example. The Hezbollah captured several Israeli soldiers and anticipated something that to be not what actually developed, because the leader of Hezbollah did not expect a war to break out over this. They've been doing this for many, many years. They did not expect the Israelis to really say enough is enough and go at it the way they did. Now, that's one unanticipated thing for Hezbollah. For the Israelis, well, they anticipated a certain kind of war, and they really didn't think it out. With all their intelligence and what we think of as a perfect network of spying and information, that we felt that maybe their intention was to wipe out Hezbollah. Did they do that? No. Now, what is happening and continuing to happen over there, one side, another side now, as you know, in Lebanon, they're killing each other now, the Christians and the Hezbollah and the Syrian-backed people and the Iranian-backed people. So a lot of people I don't think anybody knows the result of any of that is going to be. A lot of people are thinking they think will cause something, but it's not going to do that. That's so much is unplanned and unable to be thought of. This gentleman here was telling me just now that I told him I was from Boston. He said he was stationed in Boston during the Second World War. Second World War is a perfect example. The Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. Their intention, consequence of their action was to break the spirit of the American public. They did not understand the spirit of the American public. The whole country really got involved in fighting the war, the Second World War. And the results were they were defeated. It was, from the Japanese point of view, unintended consequence. Why would they have done it if they really understood the American mental attitude about that situation? So again, huge things have happened that have become unintended consequences. We're involved in Iraq, which is primo in everybody's mind. It's every day, day and night. You listen to the television, that's all you hear about, is how are we going to get out? We can't get out. Rumsfeld's gone. Colin Powell's on television saying it's a mistake. We shouldn't be there. We shouldn't add troops. We're in a quandary, all because of unintended consequences. The initial thought and philosophy was, we go in there, we take out this dictator, we establish a freedom, a democracy kind of government, not like ours, but something similar to ours, obviously, in the fact that the people are free and they're not under the gun of a dictator. But they didn't understand the country. The people that waged this war, that planned this war, they didn't plan winning the war. They didn't plan winning the peace. They won the war, but that's all they won, because it disintegrated after that. When Donald Rumsfeld made a speech, and I heard him on television saying, initially when the people were ravaging Baghdad, they were stealing everything from the buildings, the pipes and the papers and whatever, computers or whatever they were stealing. And he said, well, they were under the thumb of Saddam Hussein for so long, we're giving them that, let off steam. That's what we're letting them do. That's what he said. Well, you know, when you do crush an army and a country of that size, you've got to come in right away with laws and with restrictions and with some sort of order. The average person wants order, but all the criminals and all the let's say the people with an agenda got in the act there and would rip the country apart, and we let them do it. And then we sent Bremer over there, and he said, well, we'll disband the army, we'll disband the police force. You know, there are 40,000 policemen in New York City. In New York City, 40,000. You'd have armed guards around here and barbed wire if they didn't have 40,000 policemen. Because there are a lot of people that would like to have something that maybe you have, all right? And so that's why we have policemen. That's why we have laws, and that's why we have jails, too, for that matter. But the fact is, we disbanded that. We conquered a country and disbanded everything, and now we've been trying to train the troops, the Iraqi troops. We're trying to recreate an army, which is proved to be what? The army is helping the Shiite militia go in and capture 70 people here and blow up. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's all, now, President Bush, he wouldn't have, or even Dick Cheney, or even Rumsfeld, wouldn't have gone into this war knowing or thinking that this was a possibility. But the question is, there were people that understood that this was a possibility. If you know anything about history, you know that the Romans controlled that area for hundreds of years. Alexander the Great conquered that area and controlled that area. The British controlled Iraq, what is called Iraq, for 30, 40 years. What did they learn? What did they do to change the mental attitude of those people that live in that part of the world? Zero. Zero. You see, right now, it's not that they don't like Christians and they don't like Jews. They don't like each other, right? Shiite against Sunni. And it is now exploding into the whole Middle East area where you'll have Sunni countries now lining up against Shiite countries. And now maybe Saudi Arabia, who is now called for maybe we should get an atomic bomb, and maybe Egypt should get an atomic bomb because Iran's developing one. So now we've got, I cannot believe that people in the academia, people in the think tanks, you know, there are think tank organizations called think tanks that the government pays for to a large measure, and have access to all these brilliant people and historians and people who understand geopolitics. They didn't know that this was a possibility of happening. I mean, this is insanity, but it is, they didn't realize, so I call it unintended consequences. I didn't coin the phrase unintended consequences. This is a phrase that's been used in historical terms for many things that have happened in the world for a long time. But we are living really with the primo of unintended consequences. No one here can tell me how we're going to get out of the war or how we're going to get out. We're going to lose thousands more troops before it's over and trillions of more dollars, all because of, and that's why I call that a pure example of failure in planning. A total, you and I wouldn't have done what they did. And especially, even on a trial and error basis, it was like they purposely, which they didn't do, I'm sure, got involved in this debacle that we're in now. That is the problem. And that is unintended. I'm going to give a lot more examples, but there is the prime example now of in these days that we're living in today. Food for oil, which was related to prior to the war, right? We gave food to the Iraqis for oil. What happened, okay? That should have worked nicely, right? They got money, we got the oil, right? But what happened? Americans, Germans, Frenchmen, Russians all stole the money. People from the UN stole the money. I mean, this is something that, was that the intention? No, it was a pure, wonderful thing. Give them food and we'll extract some of the oil, which is what they produce mostly there. So there's even things that are innocent things, you would think. Things that you don't even this applies to everything we do, this concept of unintended consequences. The third thing I have, or the fourth thing, I have lower gas prices. Now, I like lower gas prices, and I'm sure you do, because your heating is less expensive. If you're driving, it's less expensive. But it helps the economy too, because you have more money to spend at the stores and for food or whatever it is you want to spend your monies on. However, this is really an unintended consequence. The fact is you use more gas, more oil, more fossil fuel when it's cheaper. Well, what does that do for pollution and ecology? Global warming, what does it do? So we're having a good time killing ourselves. So it shows you it goes from the gamut of war to something that we find good. Something that's really good, low prices for gas. But really we should have alternative fuel development, and you don't have it when fuel prices drop. People stop developing because it's not economically feasible to do so, and the government doesn't really support it in the same way, because it needs subsidy at this level to be supported. So there's something that's really good. I'm saving money. I can really have a better time or buy clothes, and some people are able to go to jobs and actually have something left over for food and whatever. But it really hurts the future generations, because we all know it causes pollution. It causes global warming. All right? Another fact, getting back to war, because war, unfortunately, is what we talk about. We're involved, the world is involved, never not involved in wars. Even such things as the terrorists that we are now terrorized by. We funded them. We armed them. We trained them. Why? Oh, well, because they were fighting Russia in Afghanistan. Remember that? And they defeated Russia. And we actually, Osama bin Laden was our buddy. Okay? We didn't think that once they beat Russia, who's their next target? You. Okay? Because their basic philosophy, the Wahhabi religion or a sect in Saudi Arabia, is against all infidels. You're all dead people as far as they're concerned, or should be dead. And so we're giving them armaments, we gave them money, we gave them training, because we were fighting Russia. Didn't we know what's the next step after they defeat Russia? They're going to go away and become our friends? Remember, governments have the ability to have thousands of people studying these questions. And there are many brilliant academics and others as well that have studied it and devoted their lives to the study of these situations. When you go in, we went into a country, for instance, even now they say, there are no American people in Iraq now that really even understand Arabic or Iraqi Arabic. We hire people to do that, but we don't have anybody trained to do that. Well, if you're going into a country, don't you say, well, I think we have to have somebody that knows something about the culture, about the religions, about the politics, about the prior hatreds, about their way of life, about their language, to at least communicate to them. I don't know how we even do it today, truthfully. They have developed, by the way, they do have a way. Technology has developed a translation. You can actually speak something into a technological box, and you get the translation. So they have that. The soldiers have that in Iraq now. So it's wonderful, Wars do develop nice products for people, so that when you go traveling 5 years from now, we'll all be able to take a little translator box, and whatever you want in any country, you don't have to know the language. You just speak your language, and it comes back with the phrase of wherever you are. I'm in France now, I'm now in Greece, you press the Greek button. That's already been developed. Wars, help that. Now, is that a wonderful thing? That's an unintended consequence that turns out to be something beneficial, perhaps. But right now, we have in a big unintended consequence on that regard. Globalization. Now, I'm pro-globalization, but pro-globalization in the sense that the world should become more equal. We devour 60%, I think, of the fossil fuels in this country. We're not 60% of the population of the world. All right? We devour most of the raw materials of the world. That's changing because Russia is changing, number one. We'll talk about that later. But China's changing, India's changing, the world is changing and catching up. And that's a good thing because middle classes, which I believe is the core of keeping peace in the world, is what's necessary in all countries. And in China, it's growing rapidly. In India, it's growing rapidly. Unfortunately, middle class is declining in this country. These are facts. I'm not making this up. We still have the bulk of people in this country are middle class, but it is becoming depreciated very, very swiftly. We have the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. Now, I'm not against rich getting richer, but I think that there's a growing gap, and you hear about it more and more on the television talk shows, of this growing gap between rich and poor. That doesn't make the rich. The rich will be happy, but at some point you get enough poor, they're not going to stand for it. Revolutions happen in those circumstances, okay? You have to have some equality, some business of having everybody uplifted. And we do that in this country better than anybody else, but it's sort of getting a little pain in that regard. And the rich, we have health insurance problems, yes. For a rich country like this, we're spending millions and billions and trillions elsewhere, but we have people, a growing number of people here, not having health insurance or at risk with health insurance. So, again, we have a wonderful system here, but it is in danger. And there's a lot of unintended consequences to these things. And I call that individualism. We have individualism, which is opportunity for all, which is true. However, some people take it to extremes, and this is part of the growing gap. We've read about all the politicians and all the top levels of much management in this country where they vote themselves $40, $50 million parachute. Even when they fail in a job, they get maybe 20 or 30, maybe 200 million. You read about it. That's not something I'm telling, but that's, again, the intention of individualism, which we promote in this country, is for everybody to feel that they can do something on their own. They're not on a class or a caste system. But let it run amok, and you get people abusing it, which we read about every day. And we have, unfortunately, a government which seems to promote it. And so therein lies maybe a switch in politics in the country, but the fact is that is an unintended consequence, because I'm sure nobody intended that. But I've been to many countries in this world over the last 50 or so years, and I've seen the rich, and I've been part of that class in many of these countries, the Philippine Islands or Mexico or wherever I've been. And I've seen the rich live very nicely, and I enjoyed the country clubs and what have you that they had there. But there are many people there that have nothing, live below subsistence. Sure, it's wonderful if you're part of that class, but eventually revolution comes and other dastard crime rises because people want what other people have. And they're going to come after it one way or another. Legally, illegally, however you want. So you've got to have laws and you've got to have controls so that people just don't, I mean, I just read this week, which you may have read also, that I think Salomon Brothers or some of those large Wall Street firms giving $600,000 bonuses to people. I mean, not one person, but hundreds and thousands of people getting $600,000 bonuses at Goldman Sachs. You know, so how many people are, maybe some people are working here, work for Goldman Sachs, and I thank, you know, I'm sure you appreciate the 600,000. But the rest of us, the money's coming from somewhere else, isn't it? It's coming from somebody. doesn't made up money. There's no printing press. It's coming from companies that are paying. And when I worked for many years, I would come to